Hello there. Welcome to Kitty Comments, my channel. Like and subscribe. I may have to call you. Anyway, today we're going to be starting Pride and Prejudice, Chapter 1, Part 1. There may be a Part 2. I don't know. I'll just let you know when I'm done. So let's get right into it. I'm going to read and I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I think about it. Just comment along the way. Okay? All right. Get yourself a cup of tea. Settle back. It's a truth universally acknowledged that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. I don't know if that's true or not. You know what I think he's in want of? Is a good kitten like myself. You know? I like to sit on your lap, I pay some attention, a little demanding, but not too demanding. You know, human women sometimes, they're a little, I don't know. But let's keep going. However little known of the feeling or the views of such a man may be on his first entering the neighborhood, this truth is so well fixed in the minds of the surrounding families that he's considered the rightful property of some one or other of their daughters. I got a lot of problem with this, because not all people are good, you know, just because they got money. Anyway, let's keep going. My dear Mr. Bennet says he's laid to him one day. Have you heard that Netherfield Park has let it last? Mr. Bennet kind of rolled his eyes and he said, replied that he had not. But it is, she returned, for Mrs. Long has just been there and she's told me all about it. Miss Long, you can count on her for some good neighborhood news. I like Mrs. Long. You want to know? She'll tell you what's going on. So, Mr. Bennet replied nothing, because he just was trying to get out of it, you know? So do you want to know who's taking it? Cried his wife impatiently. You know, he says, you want to tell me? And I got no objections to hearing it. Because he knows that, you know, she's going to tell him anyway. So that was invitation enough. Well, my dear, you must know Mrs. Long says that Netherfield has been taken by a young man of large fortune from the north of England. That he came down on Monday in a chaise lounge and four to see the place. And he was so much delighted with it that he agreed with Mr. Morris immediately that he is to take possession before Michaelmas. Just kind of like our Christmas. Kind of the same, but kind of different. We could talk about that later if you want to know. So, and some of the servants are going to be in the house by the end of next week. So Mr. Bennet, he says, what's his name? She screams out, Bingley. Well, is he married or single, Mr. Bennet asks. Oh, Mrs. Bennet says, oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls. So Mr. Bennet says, how so? How can it affect them? Well, she gets all indignant, you know? I like this about her. I like a little bit of indignation, you know? Sometimes I just hiss just for the fun of it. Okay, so let me get back to the story. So my dear Mr. Bennet, replied his wife, how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I'm thinking of his marrying one of them. She's always thinking of marrying him off. So Mr. Bennet says, is this by his design settling here? Design? Nonsense, she says. How can you talk so? But it's very likely that he may fall in love with one of them, and therefore you must visit him as soon as he comes. Mr. Bennet, he's not super social, you know? So he says, I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may send them by themselves, which perhaps would still be better, for as you as handsome as any of them, Mr. Bingley may like you best of all. But this really annoys his wife. She says, my dear, you flatter me. I certainly have had my share of beauty, but I don't pretend to be anything extraordinary now. When a woman's got 5 grown-up daughters, she ought to give over thinking of her own beauty. In such cases, a woman is not often much of a beauty to think of. Yeah, that's what he says. But my dear, you must indeed go and see Mr. Bingley when he comes to the neighborhood. He says, that's more than I engage for, I assure you. Well, she's not gonna drop the matter. No, sorry. When she's got a mindset on it, she's going after it. That's what I'm saying. But consider your daughters. Only think of what an establishment it would be for one of them. You know, Sir William and Lady Lucas are determined to go merely on that account. For in general, you know, they visit no newcomers. Indeed, you must go, for it will be impossible for us to visit him if you don't. Mr. Bennet, he's thinking. He leans back in his chair. He says, you're over scrupulous, surely. I dare say Mr. Bingley will be very glad to see you, and I will send a few lines by you to assure him of my healthy consent of his marrying whichever of he chooses of the girls. Though I must throw in a good word for my little Lizzie. Mrs. Bennet, she's not happy. She's not having it. She says, I desire you will do no such thing. Lizzie is not a bit better than the others, and I'm sure she's not half so handsome as Jane, or half so good-humored as Lydia. But you always given her the preference. They have none of them been recommended to them, he replied. They're silly and they're ignorant like other girls. But Lizzie has some more quickness than her sisters. Hold on, little hairball. Give me just a second. Just a little hairball. Not the COVID. Okay, you still with me? Okay, let's keep going. So, you make let me see. I lost my place here. Oh, goodness. The hairballs are killers. So, Mr. Bennet, how can you abuse your own children in such a way? You take delight in vexing me. You got no compassion for my poor nerves. You mistake me, my dear, he says. I got high respect for your nerves. They've been my old friends. I've heard you mention them with consideration these last 20 years at least. Then she says, then you know how I suffer. But I hope that you will get over it, he says, and live to see many young men of 4,000 come into the neighborhood. Oh, she says there will be no such use if 20 such should come, since you will not visit them. Then he says, depend on it, my dear. When there are 20, I shall visit them all. You know, Mr. Bennet was an odd mixture of quick parts, sarcastic humor, reserve, and caprice. And the experience of these 23 years had been insufficient to make his wife understand his character. Her mind was less difficult to develop. She was a woman of meaning and little information and uncertain temper. And when she was discontented, she fancied herself nervous. The business of her life was to get her daughters married, and solace was in visiting and news. So anyway, that's all I got for today. You tune in tomorrow, and we'll see what happens. Because I got a feeling this Miss Bennet lady, she gonna keep on Mr. Bennet till she gets what she wants out of him. There's gonna be no rest. That's kind of how I am. You know, sometimes I need a little attention, and I just meow and meow and meow and hiss and hiss and hiss. And then if nobody pays attention, you know, I just jump up on them and do a little claw. But you gotta be quick on your feet because sometimes they flail your arms at you. So anyway, I hope you have a good day. I'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll do chapter 2. Okay? I love you. Maybe. Probably. Something like that. I don't know.